Mr. Trump's given the great American middle class a much-needed dose of common sense, all right? I know polls aren't votes. But right now, got to say, advantage Trump. And that's my riff. All right, let's hash through all this. Joining us now, we welcome back Tudor Dixon, former GOP gubernatorial candidate, host of the Tudor Dixon podcast. Ben Domenech. No, Ben Domenech. I got to get that right, Ben. You have to apologize. He's editor-at-large at Spectator World and Fox News contributor. He's a wonderful person. I never get his name right. And our friend Alex Marlow, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, co-author of the Breitbart News Digest, and author of Breaking Biden, Exposing the Hidden Forces and Secret Money Machine behind Joe Biden, his family, and his administration. All right, kids, thank you very much for coming on. There's a lot to chew on here, and we're going to have some time. Ben, let me just start with you. I mean, I see this at many different levels. Woke progressivism, big government socialism is being rejected, the economy is being rejected. But I think Joe Biden's being rejected. People are not into him anymore. I mean, I know that's a cliche, but I think that's there. There is no confidence in this guy. I mean, even if the economy does a little bit better, as picked up in the Wall Street Journal poll, Biden doesn't get any credit, and people don't think it's going to last. People are not into Joe Biden. What does that mean at this stage of the game in early March, 8 months before the election or so?
Well, first off, Larry, I just want to say it's always a pleasure to be on with you.
Thank you.
You know how much I respect you, and I love you so much. I got to meet you for the first time when I was 13 years old, and you're one of the most influential people in my perspective on the economy and everything else related to it. I think that this is one of these weird elections where it's not the economy stupid.
Yeah.
Where even if the economy may be looking a little bit better in a couple of different ways, the fact is that Joe Biden has depressed so many of the people around him who he depended on to win last time around that I don't think he's going to be able to make that coalition work again. And I think that what you see in those numbers, what you see in those polling numbers, is really the progressive wing of the party turning against him on a number of different respects, including Gaza, by the way, including the way that he's treated Israel and the way that he's dealt with foreign policy around the world. But I also think that there's something more fundamental going on here, which is just that the American people, they do not want to have a president who they can't count on to last 4 more years. And that's what they see when they look at Joe Biden. And I think that that's something very logical for them to see. So it's really a depressing moment, I think, for the Democratic Party, that they're having to roll him out here again and try to, make the American people trust that he can make it 4 more years. The American people are not buying that. They're rejecting it. And that's why you see these poll numbers behaving the way that they are.
I mean, Tudor Dixon, welcome back to the show. Excuse my hoarseness. I've been fighting a cold and whatnot for a couple of days. But really, this may not be solely about the economy the way many elections are. I think Ben is making a very good point. I do think it's about the failure of progressivism. I do think borders and security and law and order and our standing in the world. I mean, all these things seem to be collapsing around Joe Biden, who doesn't seem either physically or cognitively capable of doing much about it, if anything. And that gives Trump a big advantage. Now, Tudor, I don't know. This is March. The election's not until November. So between now and then, what do you expect to see from, let's start with Donald Trump, all right? He has the advantage in all these polls, but as you know, polls are not votes. Where does Mr. Trump go with the advantage so far?
Well, Larry, thank you for having me. I think that Donald Trump can go really far in states like my home state, Michigan, because we are seeing this, like you said, the progressive wing of the party break off. And that is, in some cases, students who decided to vote uncommitted instead of vote for Joe Biden. In some cases, it is our Arab American population that decided to vote uncommitted. But also, we had a person from Wayne County come out today and say, hey, I want to announce that I came out and voted uncommitted because I felt in Wayne County, for those that don't know, is the Detroit area. And he said, I came out and I voted uncommitted because I don't feel like Joe Biden has taken time to reach out to the black community. I think this is very interesting. But to what Ben said, I think they're also saying, can this guy make it another 4 years on Joe Biden? And we feel more comfortable that Donald Trump can, and we feel comfortable that he'll choose a vice president that's good as well. Because if you go to the Biden camp, you're like, okay, if he can't make it, then we end up with Kamala, and that's a mess too. Overall, for the Democrats, this is a nightmare. But the economy still is playing a role, because those folks in Detroit are saying, man, we were making a lot more money under Donald Trump. And he can come back to them and he can say, I'm going to bring jobs back, I'm going to bring the economy back, and you're not going to have to worry about the border. Everything is in his favor right now. Nothing is in Joe Biden's favor.
Yeah, I mean, really, actually, they got a pay cut. Middle-class workers, I don't care, black, white, Hispanic, Latin, and so forth, it doesn't matter. They all got a pay cut under Biden. They got a pay increase under Trump. So who do you like? You like the pay increase. Before I go to Alex, let me just play this Trump speaking today on unification after the Supreme Court decision. Take a listen.
I think it's a very big day for America. I think it's a very big day for liberty, and I think it's just a great day for this country. Again, I hope it's unifying like I think, but it is. It's a big step toward unification.
You know, Alex, it may seem ironic, but Mr. Trump's the guy defending democracy. And it may seem ironic, but Mr. Trump is talking about unity. And I'll just add one more thing here. People don't like Joe Biden. I know he's old, but he's mean. He's been this is not the Joe Biden of 10, 15, 20 years ago. When I knew him, by the way, fairly well, I used to interview him on another network. He's mean. He's nasty. He's difficult. And I think that's killing him, among other things. But here's Trump as the unifier. What do you think, Alex Marlow?
Yeah, I think Trump gets it. Trump understands that if this election is about Donald Trump's personal baggage, then he's going to lose some of that lead. But if this election is a referendum on Joe Biden, if this election is about actually supporting democracy, supporting our republic, this Supreme Court decision, Larry, was a big win for the Democrats, too. If they were seen as the ones keeping the standard bearer for the other side off the ballot, this would have been disaster for them, because they've been walking around telling us they're the authorities on democracy. And they were literally keeping the Republican nominee off of the ballot in one state or multiple states. It would have been such a horrible look. They could never have defended that over the next 6 months. And now they don't have to. So they got bailed out in a big way. But the way Trump's talking, he's clearly learned some serious lessons.
You know, Alex, it would have been cool, and to their advantage, if the Democrats or the Biden White House came out and applauded this decision.
Absolutely.
Would have made them look much better.
Yes.
Ben.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ben, yeah, I'll let you take that. In fact, I got another soundbite that I want you to hear. But I'm just saying, you know what? They've been wrong on so many things, and the weaponization of justice is one of them. Nobody liked the idea of keeping Trump off the ballot. Frankly, polls show nobody much likes the whole lawfare war against Trump and what they did in New York and so forth. But Biden's aren't smart enough. Here's some more of Trump from Mar-a-Lago today. Hang on a second.
I want to win based on my policies are better. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to get interest rates down. You're going to be able to buy homes again. I mean, you can't buy a home today. The interest rates are so high. I want to win on safe borders. I want to stop wars. I want to stop the war in Ukraine with Russia. I want to stop what's happening in Israel. If I was president, you wouldn't have had inflation. Inflation was caused by high energy prices. You
know, Ben, it's just like he's hitting on all cylinders here. This is the positive, message-driven Trump. It's economy plus, it's interest rates, it's mortgages. It's stopping wars, right? I think he's getting young people because he doesn't want to fight wars. And maybe we could be strong enough and tough enough, peace through strength like Ronald Reagan. But, I mean, this is Trump at the top of his game, Ben.
You know, look, I think that the more that we hear from him that is along these lines, the better. And I think that one of the things that we really see, and this is to Alex's point, is that the decision that the Democrats made the radical left made to try to engage in this type of lawfare, it has absolutely blown up in their face. They have completely failed. And the fact is that, they tried to essentially take off the ballot, the former president of the United States, in a way that I think the rational American responds to with, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like democracy. That doesn't sound like the ability to actually have a republic. They recoil from it. And that's something that I think is very healthy about the American populace. And the fact that they've done that is something that's very good. And the fact that the Supreme Court rejected this so unanimously is very good as well. I'm very satisfied with this decision, and I hope that we can move on to actually having a real contest. I think it's one that the former president is currently winning, and winning going away.
I just think this gives him a big lift. I think it's a big lift just a couple days before the State of the Union. Last one, Tudor Dixon. My eyes are old and I am infirm, but I could swear I read in this New York Times Siena poll that women are 20 percentage points more likely to say that Trump's policies help them more than Mr. Biden's. All right, I swear I read that in the New York Times Siena poll, Tudor. I know how infirm I am, but I think that's an extraordinary number, and I'm going to give you the last word.
Absolutely. We're out there. We're buying gas. We're taking the kids from place to place. We're buying the groceries, and we know how much everything costs, and we know the impact to our families. We know that life was better under Donald Trump. And you're going to hear Joe Biden talking a lot about, corporate greed and the blame game, and the Republicans won't let me do what I need to do. At the end of the day, mothers out there know what it's like to try to take care of their aging parents and their children at the same time, and how much it's costing them. And they know that's all on Joe Biden.
All right. Maybe my eyes read it right. 20 points, women, awesome stuff. Tudor Dixon, Alex Marlow, Ben Domenech, thank you ever so much to all of you. We will see what happens.